This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your source for the latest Iowa ag news headlines right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, Mark Magnuson, and Andy Peterson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Dustin.
Well, welcome everybody to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Huffman. Today is Wednesday, the 29th of October. So glad you could join us here today. Coming up a little later on in the program, we're going to talk about the closing markets and get a little bit of reaction to China buying 2 to 3 loads of U.S. soybeans earlier this morning. That'll be with Kenan Layden of agmarket.net. But first, we had a chance to sit down with Iowa Ag Secretary Mike Naig for our monthly chat. And we talked a little bit about the trade situation, both with China, Southeast Asia, an upcoming trip for the Secretary, and also the theories about what could happen with Argentinian beef imports. Here on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, it's time right now for our October sit-down with Iowa Ag Secretary Mike Naig. We did get some nice announcements over the weekend, some trade preliminary agreements reached with some of the Southeast Asian countries. I know you're heading there very soon as well, but also we obviously know the talks with China are coming up. There's lots of things for the both presidents to talk about when they're together, but obviously ag trade is going to be one of those. I mean, we're in a pretty decent situation, at least right now, but again, things can't wait too much longer either.
No, I think there is a sense of urgency, and I appreciate that the administration. I think you're seeing a reflection of that, right? And so whether it's the Chinese purchase of Argentinian soybeans that has caused a lot of folks to be very concerned about what's happening there, and remember, in that situation, what's ultimately driving the challenge around that? It's the fact that China has been sitting out the soybean market this fall in a way that they normally don't, and they shouldn't. And so what we're encouraged by certainly is that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent making some indications over the weekend that that soybean is definitely being talked about between the U.S. and China. I'm certainly hopeful that as the presidents are meeting, that it will in fact be part of that agenda. The fact is, we need China to come to the table and be willing to negotiate, not trying to hold the Midwest hostage or the Heartland hostage in these negotiations. We never want to be collateral damage in these bigger talks that obviously include things that are beyond food and agriculture. And so I am encouraged. And I continue to hear folks say, look, we don't like what's happening right now. It's a lot of disruption. And at the same time, we get what the administration is attempting to do here with new trade agreements, expanded agreements, and frankly, not allowing a country like China to take advantage of us in ways that they have for so many years. We need a fairer relationship, and I'm still hopeful that those things can happen. So I'm expecting even more announcements as we go through this week, as the president is traveling throughout Asia. We'll certainly be pushing for that and hoping for it, but more than hoping, we want to continue to advocate for that.
I know you brought up the Argentinians, selling beans to China, but also we're talking with Argentina about possibly bringing cattle into this country. Yeah. Some in the cattle industry are saying it's not the fix-all that we're going to need to stabilize maybe some of the prices at the meat counter, but they also see where the president's trying to go with some of the decisions. And so, have you been hearing anything from both the cattle industry and the producers here in the state about any of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think everybody's had a chance to take a collective deep breath here over the last week. Here's factually, I think a lot of our producers looked at what happened in the futures market. That's what has caused some of the anger and some of the real concern is what happened with the market coming down. If you really look at the facts of, hey, what would it mean if more Argentinian beef was coming into the country? It's a small number to start with, so even if it does increase, it's really not going to significantly change the dynamic. But the whole point is, what the markets don't like is that kind of a surprise or something that pronouncements that don't seem to be have been messaged before. And so certainly the impact of the futures market is not something we want to see. But we also want to keep this in balance, right? The answer is not always importing more, although we do import a lot of beef from outside of the United States, in addition to producing a lot of beef in the United States. It's always going to be a balancing act. I think on the heels of certainly the market impact then was the announcement coming out of USDA and Secretary Rollins on a multi-pronged approach to try to help grow but let's just say it this way, to help the beef industry, to help grow beef production and help support beef producers in this country. Now, a lot of those solutions or those fixes were things that were really targeted to our Western friends, rangeland and those types of things. All good. I think those are really important steps to be taken, but we're also trying to frame up what are some steps that could be taken in a place like Iowa in terms of getting access to more grass, perhaps some changes to the CRP program to allow for working lands conservation. So we're very supportive of and interested in what those announcements were made and how they affect our Western friends. Now trying to think about how do we go to even the next level and see what we can't do for Midwestern and certainly Iowa producers.
And that again was Iowa Ag Secretary Mike Naig. We're going to take a short break and hear from the Iowa Soybean Association and the soy checkoff. When we come back, we'll look at the closing markets. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net. Well, we're back on Ag Matters PM here on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Time to run down the closing numbers. We have Kenan Layden from agmarket.net joining us. And Kenan, we started off the day with some good news before the markets opened. China back in the marketplace for American soybeans, but the market kind of just shrugged that one off a little bit today.
Yeah, so beans had an interesting trade. This morning they were down about 10 cents on the overnight. They spent most of the day pretty unchanged, and some of the deferred months, your Nov 26 sold off here at the end of the day. News that some P&W business was done, probably by China. There is no government reporting, but Reuters reported the story, so came from a reliable news source. Then there's some rumblings that if the deal is done, maybe this was some of the weakness today, that if a deal is done, it could be a framework deal. So meaning that China will buy X amount of tons, and the rumored amounts, again, they're rumored, are no more than they've bought typically over the past 3 years. So that could have lost some of the exuberance here today before we get the actual news on the deal here within probably the next 24 hours. They're in South Korea, which is 12 hours ahead of us. So it's probably going to be while we're sleeping. So might be some interesting overnight markets in the soybean markets. Corn, some spread narrowing there. Front months closed slightly positive, deferred were slightly off. Wheat kind of mixed with, same thing. Some of the closer months showing some slight gains, and some of the deferred months being down a little more. But overall, a pretty quiet day. Not like the last two.
Moving on to the livestock side of things then, Ken, we know that cattle's been under pressure. Hogs have been looking for any kind of footing they can find. Did that continue again today, or what did we see out of the Merc?
Yeah, the interestingly enough, cattle had a nice pickup today. They were close to limit up for a while, and they closed today significantly higher. $8 to $9 depending on the contract and the feeders, which is good news to see that there was some buying here after a huge sell-off. So I think we still closed over the normal limit in some of the contracts. We'll have to see if we're still expanded limits today. I didn't quite see exactly where we closed, but if you close any of the contracts above the normal limits at 925 in feeders, that they continue to be expanded as they were today when we didn't close limit down with the expanded limits, but we were still over that 925. Hogs continue to be pressured. Buying hasn't been seen there yet. A little slower sell-off today, but that has been a very strongly sold market.
All right. Well, lots for us to be thinking about here, Ken. And if folks want to look at some of the things that you guys are following there at agmarket.net, maybe get some advice from the team there, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, I will add one other tidbit. So if you're listening, the Fed did cut interest rates here article about 23 minutes ago by 25 basis points, and they said the future is unclear, so no clear direction there. And if you want to find more from us, check us out online at aigmarket.net.
All right, Kenan Layden's been our guest here today. Kenan, thanks so much for the insight. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks.
Thanks again to Kenan Layden of agmarket.net for providing us that information, and we'll keep an eye on that tomorrow morning with the Market Matters program to see if anything develops overnight. We're going to go ahead and take a look now at the closing market numbers on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network market screen. At the close, December corn was up 2 at $4.34 even. November beans also up 2 cents at $10.80 and a quarter. Soybean meal up $2.20 at $3.0870. Soybean oil was down a dime at $50.16. Chicago wheat up 3 1/4 at $5.32 1/4. Kansas winter wheat up 2 3/4 at $5.22 3/4. Kansas spring wheat down 14 1/4 at $5.33 1/2. Minneapolis spring wheat down 1 1/4 at $5.60 1/2. Oats down 1 1/2 at $2.89 1/2. On the Merc, live cattle up $4.32 at $230.90. Feeders up $8.67 at $342.07. Lean hogs down a nickel at $80.77. Pork cutouts up $1 at $95, and Class 3 milk down 2 cents at $17.82. And that's been a check of the closing markets, and that brings us to the end of today's show. You can find all our content online at iowaagnet.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, X, and through our YouTube channel. And don't forget, you can get free market analysis sent 3 times a day right through your mobile device to the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network Market Podcast, openings, middays, and closings. From the iAron Studios in Des Moines, I'm Dustin Huffman. For Mark Magnuson and Riley Smith, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.